Good morning. Welcome to the Financial Pillars All About the Money podcast presented by Our Neutral Voices. Our show is all about helping our audience understand money, mindsets, and tap into the economic knowledge that builds financially secure individuals, families, and communities. So whether you're tuning into the show to learn about budgeting, building credit, investing, or starting your own business, we're here to break down the knowledge in a real and relatable way. Back on the set, my guys over here. I'm Ryan Leopard. I'm a private banker with Star Financial Bank.
JJ Foster, Lake City Bank.
And Terrence here from Greenway Bank.
Yes. Missing, unfortunately, our man Ben. Had a slight back injury, I guess. Couldn't make it this morning. But this is our first show since the Youth Sense seminar. So let's kick it off today, kind of recapping that. How did that go?
Hey, went well. Kudos to Terrence. He led our workshops. Did a great job. I acted as the ringmaster, handing out candy and $5 bills to anybody that answered questions correctly. But
$5 bills. Anybody that answered the question? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Yeah. You should saw kids sitting at the edge of their seats, waiting on the $5 bills. The other unique thing or the interesting thing that I appreciated was a lot of some parents, some coaches that had brought some kids, and they sat in on the workshops. And at intermission, they talked about everything that they were learning. They talked about, hey, I brought my kid under the guise that there's some stuff I need to learn. And we had some good, sidebar conversations. So I've actually ran into a couple kids out in the street that said, Mr. JJ, when's the next one? So went well. Terrence, you got anything you going to have?
Oh, yeah, I will say it definitely went well. Initially, from the beginning, of course, I would say some of the youth were a little bit apprehensive when it came to participating, or at least being honest about their level of knowledge when it comes to financial banking, savings, checking accounts, etc., things like that. But the more that we interacted with them, the more that they began to participate. And once they realized that JJ was pretty much handing out cash and candy as prizes, that pretty much got a large participation group from the youth especially. But it was nice to also get participation from the adults as well. So it was a very interactive, very good event. I'm actually proud that I got to spearhead that presentation so much.
And I'm going to say this too before you go to your next. We have to cover a wide range of things because, there's no one size fits all. And what, we kind of notice in the audience and what happens in real life, all those kids aren't created equal. You got some kids that had jobs that, the parents worked and kid worked and their money was their money. They didn't have to contribute. So, that puts them way ahead of the game. You had other kids that are there, they worked. And they had to work if they wanted to go to movies, if they needed new gym shoes, that was their responsibility. Then you had the third category. Some kids, they were working and are key contributors to the family. So each and every one of those kids, the things that we talked about, whether it's saving, whether it's how to use your money appropriately, we address all those different kids, coming from those different areas.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there due to some prior commitments, but saw the pictures and looked like he had a full house that night, so that was awesome to see. What was the age demographic like? We were talking early high school, late high school, early 20s. What was the demographic?
Yeah, I think it was our demographic, 6th grade to 12th grade. I think we had it in there. We had boys, we had girls. So we hit our demographic.
Gotcha. And what were some of the topics that you covered? What were some of the topics that you felt were had the biggest impact?
Ooh, me personally, I would definitely say it was a module about SMART goals. Pretty much. Yes, yeah. It was an acronym. Again, I don't work for Lake City, sorry. But it pretty much helped break down every step that is necessary for you to create a goal and make sure that it's a reachable and obtainable goal. And that was something that I decided to make sure everybody participated with. So I actually had the youth come up with their own plan. There was already a scenario given, so I pretty much pulled everybody and we participated to come up with a SMART plan to assist the person in the scenario with reaching their goal. And it was nice to see everybody working together, everybody pitching in, everybody wanting to answer so that they could potentially get a $5 bill or even a candy bar. So it was nice to pretty much see how everybody's critical thinking played into how everybody's not going to be on the same playing field. So they understood that, JJ might be able to hit that goal in a shorter amount of time than somebody else would that's making less money or just started working, things like that. So it was good to see everybody critically think about how their goal affects them personally on an individual level versus everybody on a broader scale.
Gotcha.
And the funny thing with that, the SMART goal, it's written up there. Like you said, it's an acronym. So went around the room. I said, who can tell me why it's called a SMART goal? And everybody in the room to a man, cause you got to be smart with what you do with your money. You got to be responsible. Just all this, and I'm cracking up. I said the answer is literally right there in front of you, and everybody that gave all these different answers. I don't think anybody got it right, did they? I had to literally say it. It's smart because it's it's spelled out. And then
What is it? Put you on the spot there.
No, you gonna put me on the spot. I'm just saying, I'd have to go to the
I need
notes.
that visual up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to go to the notes. But to Terrence's point, everything we talk about, you're unique to your own situation. Everybody's not saving the same, just based off the scenario that I gave. And one of the things too that we focused on was what means something to you. Everybody has different wants and values. Like you talk about, you a sneakerhead, you into music. So therefore, what you gonna spend your money on, you might be saving up for the latest Jordans that come out. Somebody over here care less about some shoes. That's not something I'm saving up for or I need. But they're literally, when you get kids, they get caught up in that. Well, hey, Ryan's got something. I got to get them. I'm not even really into shoes, but I got to get them. So we talked about that. What means something to you? And if it just because it means something to me or Terrence or you, I don't mean it's something to you. Put that money away for something that you like,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just to hit on that real quick, sorry, Ryan. So pretty much that conversation was geared around positive and negative influences when it comes to spending. And the biggest thing that we pretty much touched on was, just because somebody else has it doesn't mean that you necessarily need it.
Negative influence right there, right?
Exactly. Same thing with social media. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, just because you see somebody else on social media has it doesn't mean that you need to waste your life savings just so that you can get it too. Because truth is, in a matter of days or even weeks or maybe 1 or 2 months, you're going to be tired of it. And you're going to be ready for the next thing.
Social media is the most powerful form of advertisement nowadays.
Absolutely.
Like I always see, kids are always talking about the newest Prime flavor or this or that, and they know about all the new things, before I know about it. Like, how do you know? Oh, they watch, and then try to explain to them. Those people that are on there telling you these things are so great are getting paid to do this. You may not think so. They're just making a video. They're getting paid, or they're getting their product for free because they're going on there and making an advertisement, essentially promoting it to you, telling you how great it is. And then you're going to your parents. Now I'm at the store and I need this. I need this. I need it. Yeah. Right. So real quick, before we get into today's topic, you mentioned candy bars or $5 bills. We're always talking about wise decisions on the show. Did they have a decision between the $5 bill and the candy bar, and how many people chose the candy bar over the $5 bill?
I'm gonna pass that back over to JJ.
No, I just base it off the level of the question or the quality of the answer.
So I was hoping nobody was going to take the candy bar over the $5 bill.
Definitely not, because there was a couple kids who had a candy bar. I was like, hey, Mr. JJ, I can get $5. So
yeah. My 8-year-old son would take the candy bar over the $5 bill, though.
Yeah, no, and I think a couple people are. Yeah, I'm telling you, a couple people left with. I say a good $15-$20. So can't beat it. We have some sharp kids in there too.
So if you want to earn some money, when's the next session?
June 18th from 6 to 8 at the Fort Wayne Urban League, 2135 South Hannah. Hope to see you out again. And it's something we're building on what we talked about before, but it definitely, you wouldn't have to have attended the first session to get something out of the next session. So it's going to be bigger, better. Got a lot of some other banks that'll be involved as well. So some different presenters, but like we do everything, looking to be bigger and better. So come on out, June 18th, 6 to 8 o'clock, Fort Wayne Urban League.
All right, awesome. So kicking off today's topic, we'll transition into savings versus spending. Right? The difference in mindset. So I'm going to use my kids as example. I got my 11-year-old daughter here who only thinks about spending, right? She doesn't care how much money she has. The only reason she cares how much money she has is because she knows how much she can go buy and spend. And then I got my son over here. He earned $10 the other day from something, and he grabbed it and said, Dad, can you go throw this in the bank for me? Mm-hmm. Right? She would never think about throwing it. She gets mad at me when I want to put money in the bank for her. He says, here, go put this in the bank. The difference is their bank accounts, right? And you can tell just by looking at that, the level of mentality I'm dealing with from each one of them, right? But not just kids, but even in adults, right? We all struggle with, spending versus savings, right? So
Correct.
Talk to us a little bit about that mindset.
Yeah, I actually, one of the reasons I said I wanted to dialogue about this, we just spent the first couple minutes of the segment talking about youth sense. I ran into an OG who was talking about, you guys teaching them kids how about spending. What's the purpose of making money if you're not going to spend it, man? You could always make more money. Mm-hmm. And he was dead serious. And it's somebody that I know is well off, but he's done investments and has some businesses and all that. But that's always been his mentality towards finances. And now I know what he was saying because I know yeah, anytime he had money, it was going into something, yeah, spending money to make money. But he was definitely serious though. But he's talking about as a child, like, hey, you give them the kids money, they gotta be able to do some things, some fun things, and whatnot. But I just think that it's worth the discussion, because obviously there is that balance, and there is that what we talked about, where you're at in your life, personally. So that's why I wanted to shoot that at you guys and get thoughts, because I guarantee it's people that watch us and had the same exact thoughts.
Yeah, and I don't know, what mindset where it comes from, but thinking back to like my kids that I just talked about, right? But a lot of people don't grow out of that, and it's just an impulse buy, right? But their finances may not actually allow for that. Your buddy there, you mentioned well off. So of course he likes to spend. There's money always coming in. But when you mentioned he also spends money to make money, I would look at that at a different term. That's spending money, or is he investing his money?
There you go.
Right? He's investing his money. I wouldn't consider that spending. And then there's also things that we have to spend money on, which doing JA classes, it starts even, I think, kindergarten. One of the big topics is learning needs versus wants. Okay. So you make some money, you're going to have to spend money to live, food, rent, electric bills, things like that. But then you have to weigh your balance of needs versus wants, right? Terrence?
Same thing with that. The first thing that came to mind was the 50-30-20. 50% of your income goes towards your needs, 30% of it goes towards your wants, and 20% of it goes into savings. I know that has been a tactic that some individuals have used throughout their life that has pretty much benefited them a long way to help manage their finances. I do think, again, this goes hand to hand with budgeting as well. When it comes to spending, you want to look at impulse buying versus wants and needs, of course.
So I think on the last episode, we talked about the impulse buying, your example of the gentleman you talked with, that gas station, and how much he realized he was doing, right?
Going to the gas station just because it's a way for you to get out of the house, just because you have the money to spend it. There's not necessarily a need for you to want to do that. It's just you doing it because you can. Of course, for example, your children, the daughter that pretty much makes the money and then goes and spends it, maybe she's like, okay, well, I worked for it, so why can't I spend it? That is it's a great ideology. There's nothing wrong with that ideology, but in terms of short-term thinking, yes, you make the money, go spend it. Of course, you don't necessarily have that many responsibilities just yet. Now, your son, on the other hand, if I make money, I want you to go put it in the bank for me. He's thinking long-term. His future is already in the works. He knows what he wants to do. He knows that once he finally moves out, if he decides to move out anytime soon, he's going to have a safety net for him already in place. Of course, in terms of spending, you have to think about what's important to you. So if you know for a fact you need to pay $50 to keep your phone on, but there's a $50, pair of headphones that just came out. Are you going to pay to keep your phone on, or are you going to go buy those new headphones just because they came out? So in terms of needs and wants, your needs should always come first.
Now, just keeping it where we're at with your son and your daughter, the saver versus spender. When I research this, you talk about spending and saving. They talk about quality of life. Spenders' quality of life is pretty good, because, hey, you spending your money, you doing what you want to do, having a great time. Now, somebody that's saving, they might forego something that's fun for that safety net. So, but then I guess when that catastrophe happens or something where you need that, I guess, hey, quality of life kind of shifts. They're all right, because now the spender is going to be stressful if something happens, because they don't have that money. But with the gentleman that, like I said, that has always lived like that, his whole thing is, if something happens, he'll figure out a way to make money to cover that. So I guess that is the spender's mindset, right? Is I'm gonna always come up. Why would I need a safety net? If something happens, I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah. So in my daughter's case, her safety net is her parents, right? She doesn't need a savings account because she likes to play. Yeah. But really what the mentality comes down to with those two is she loves to shop and he hates to shop. So he doesn't care, right? The money doesn't mean as much to him because he doesn't want to go to the store spending money on things. His biggest thing is he wants, he's got some cash at home, but he's like, if we go to the ball field, he wants to be able to take $5 so he can go get, some candy or slushie or something like that. but there's nothing he wants that's $20, $100, something like that he's just out there, you know. And she got some gift cards for her birthday, about $100 for the Amazon gift cards, and she couldn't just wait to go buy it. And I saw what she bought. I was like, really? That's what you decided to buy? Yeah. You know, skincare girls, obviously, yes, that's what they're into. I don't get it, but it is. Things that are going to disappear because they're going to get all used up. You spend all your money on that type of stuff for it. But yeah, just a complete difference in mentality and mindset, spending versus savings. And we've talked on the show before about we can't just work all the time and save all the time. We have to treat ourselves sometimes. So it is okay to spend money, but you have to budget, you have to balance, you have to know where your finances are at and make it a priority. Whatever's extra, that's what you can treat yourself with.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the other factor too is age. As people get older in their life and they get, you know, start looking, it's like, what am I going to do? I got to spend this money. I'm not going to leave it for, you know, somebody else. I'm going to start enjoying myself. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you see people taking reverse mortgages on homes and things like that, just trying to utilize that fund. So,
mm-hmm. Yep.
I think another thing that goes into it as well, when it comes to spending, when you have like debit cards, credit cards, and even physical cash. So some years ago when I was younger, of course, I remember I bought a moped. That was my first form of transportation, and I paid cash for it. And I still remember this like it was yesterday. It would cost me $989, and I held that $989 in my hand.
Was that a need or a want?
That was a need because I had 2 jobs at the time, and getting transportation was more important.
You still run that moped to this day.
Price of gas, I don't blame you.
Exactly, yeah. You know, it took me like $2 to fill up the tank. It was great.
Tool.
Just sucked during the wintertime. But the thing was, holding that cash in my hand, when it came time for me to pay that bill, it was like a struggle for a second because I didn't want to let it go. I was like, this is money that I worked for. This is money that I wanted to hold on to as long as I possibly could. Even though it was a transactional, you know, interaction where I knew I would be gaining something that I needed. When you physically hold the cash in your hand, it's harder for me to want to relinquish it to somebody else versus, oh, you know, it's going to be $500. Okay, here's my debit card. You swipe it, you give it back. I'm not consciously thinking about, oh, $500 just left my account. It's whatever. I know it's still there. I'll check my account. I'll still have money left over. But when you physically have the cash in your hand, I feel it's harder for people to just give that away because they know that once I give it to you, I'm not getting that back. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the difference between seeing it and just thinking about it mentally when it comes to spending as well.
But you just touched on something. That's why people get in trouble with credit cards and debit cards. They don't see
you don't have to physically see the cash leaving. Yeah. So
you just have to look and get that statement. Whoa, I spent what? So yeah, that definitely.
Yeah, we talk about getting older, more mature, and things like that. That's one of the things, you know, at least me personally, grow out of. It was like I always had a credit card. I always made credit card payments on time. But when you hold balances on your credit cards, and then that's just one more bill you have to pay per month, and your money comes in, you're like, oh man, I got to pay off something I bought 2-3 months ago. You're right. Yeah. I got to make a payment towards that. You know, once that credit card is actually paid off at zero balance, it's like, whew. I'm not doing that again. I haven't paid interest on a credit card in probably 10 years with it. Doesn't mean I don't use my credit card. I use it, but that balance is getting paid off in full and it's manageable. I'm not out there spending money on something I didn't have the money to pay for in cash. I just chose to use that as the payment method for points, rewards, whatever, and then took the cash I had and paid it towards the card, right? So what are some benefits of savings? Why should we really think about savings?
Savings, I think we talked about it. I mean, you know, Tara's hit on it. Unforeseen circumstances, having that safety net. And again, the key word I think that we've used throughout this whole conversation is balance. And you get that balance. I'm gonna spend. I'm gonna enjoy myself. I'm gonna treat myself, as you call it. But I'm gonna put some stuff away just in case, you know, something does happen. But that's the biggest thing, just because we never know. And then when you have kids, you know, nothing goes faster than money when you have kids. Mm-hmm. You got, you know, sporting events. They got hanging out with their friends. They can get hurt, all kind of stuff that it's like you just coming out your pocket because, hey, this is your responsibility and you have no control over it. So you always want to have something put away. I think the other smart thing, like you said, investment, not just spending to spend, but if you got a wise investment, you know, smart investment, that's what should be taking place. Let your money work for you. I mean, we talked about it. Some of these CDs that are out there now. Some good rates on CDs. Using your credit card, like you said, not where I'm paying to run up a balance, but I'm utilizing points and rewards where you getting money back. So it's all kind of ways to make money off your money. But those are things that come to my mind.
Yeah, and when we talk about savings, a good rule of thumb, especially you can speak to this in your world with mortgages, right? What's the rule of thumb they want to see when you go to get a home loan? 6 months worth of savings. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean that's the safety net, and everybody has different amounts. But obviously, if you got 6 months of savings, yeah, that puts you up there. That's a good,
healthy goal to achieve, right? So if you lose your job, what that means is you got 6 months of reserves and savings account or wherever that you can maintain your life, your bills, pay the things that are your obligations for that amount of time, right? Because if you unexpectedly lose your job, you have a catastrophic accident, you can't go to work, something like that. You by the time you get back to work, right, start looking and applying for jobs. I mean, you're weeks, couple months down the road. So that 6 months will get you by. Then you got to wait for paychecks to start coming in.
Yeah, and then I'll tell you another fail safe when you're dealing with mortgages. The debt to income ratio, 42%. A lot of people, they want to come in 42%. Why can't I spend half of my income on my mortgage? No, we're kind of putting a fail safe in there for you that if something comes up, you still want to have some wiggle room that you can pay this mortgage. So,
and also understanding that what they're calculating, that debt ratio, that's not all your bills. That's
Correct.
That's not your electric bill. That's not
Correct.
your
phone bill,
phone
Wi-Fi,
bill.
car,
You're not your cell phone bill. Not the other things out there, because those aren't. Well, they are debts and obligations. They're not credit cards. They're not loans. They're not things that you basically contractually obligated to. Like, you don't have to have electricity, do you?
Yeah.
No, you need it. Yes, you want it turned
Correct.
on, but so that debt ratio is there to kind of factor in that stuff.
Yeah, but again, if you're coming in at 60% of your income, I mean, it's like I wouldn't advise that. And if somebody's going to loan to you at that, then that's some problems too.
Gotcha. So, what are some problems with overspending? That impulse buying.
From a financial institution perspective, I know we talked on this, I think our last show, we talked about fees.
Very good.
That is one of the biggest ones, of course. Your bank account is your responsibility. You are accountable for that 150%. If you know you have $50 in your account, you shouldn't be out there trying to spend 75. I mean, that's just common sense. Fees will get tacked on. Some financial institutions offer $35 up all the way up to $45 I've seen in overdraft fees if you overdraft your account from overspending. I think, once again, budgeting and spending should all be calculated. Your dollars should be spoken for before you even spend it. Biggest thing with that as well, overspending, it dips into other accounts as well. I've seen individuals spend the money in their checking account and then move funds from their savings account just to potentially be able to still purchase things that they don't necessarily need, but just because they want them. Overspending is a dangerous habit to have, especially if you're using credit cards. It is extremely dangerous. It can rack up a lot of debt for you and put you in a hole that you don't need to be in. So when it comes to overspending, be mindful of how you're spending. Overspending is a dangerous path to go down.
Yeah, and from the fee perspective there, it always, and we'll probably chuckle at this too, is, us being bankers and seeing how people utilize money and the mindset of people. It always killed me when I would see somebody talking about their overdraft fees that they got, and it was because of a $12 Taco Bell charge at 2:00 in the morning. Mm-hmm. Impulse buying. Right?
Yeah.
You didn't care. You've had overdraft fees before. You can't claim ignorance on that. But at the moment, you only cared about getting Taco Bell, knowing that $12 Taco Bell charge was going to cost you $34 more in an overdraft fee. So now you're at what, about $50 for that Taco Bell? You know what kind of steak you could have had for that? Thought process. Think before that. The impulse buying.
Impulse buying. I like a collection of junk or stuff you don't need. Stuff that, just what you just said. Why? You have nothing to show for it, or just some junk that you didn't need. Mm-hmm. That's what impulse buying. That's what it gets for you.
Yeah, slime, kids and slime. Yeah. So, a few more minutes left on the show. Anything to add to the?
No, I just like I said, the key we hit on, balance. Mm-hmm. Have that balance. Understand your personal situation. When I deal with people in the mortgage business, everybody is unique to their own personal space and their own situations. You know, I can't worry about what Terrence is doing. I can't worry about what Ryan is doing. I know, you know, how much money I make. I know what my responsibilities are. So, you know, I may have some wiggle room. I've got a nephew, you know, 40-something years old, not married, no kids. You know, all his money is his money. He can live a completely different lifestyle from, you know, one of my other nephews who's got 2 kids, you know, and a wife at home. You know, they have to balance out with what they're doing, but they're not equal. So that's what I say to everybody. You're unique to your own circumstances. You figure it out, take, you know, how much you make versus what your responsibilities are, and then come up with something that you're comfortable with.
So what are some tools we can utilize to help accumulate or build a savings? Terrence?
I'm going to have to hit on the SMART goal again. The reason with that being said, I think the biggest aspect that I went over was we can all have the same goal. Mm-hmm. I said, but if you don't hit your goal within the time frame that you set for yourself, that doesn't mean you quit. That doesn't mean you find a different goal. That means you readjust your plan and you keep going. So initially, the scenario that was given was there's a college student that needed basically a new laptop. It was going to cost $300, and they had to basically get it before their semester started in fall. So they gave them about 3 months. So I worked with the kids and JJ, and we came up with a plan to meet that goal. And, you know, I can't just give them the easy path. So what happens if you don't make this X amount of dollars each month? Mm-hmm. Well, I will maybe have to elongate this, or I have to go get another job. There are multiple factors out there to building a savings account. Again, hitting on the 50% towards your needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% towards your savings. Again, having your savings is going to be your first form of a safety net, of course. Having funds set aside when you have that rainy day, if your tire pops or your brakes go out, things like that, you need to get your engine replaced, or even you want to go buy a house or buy a car or buy a new phone. Having a savings is important. Saving towards a goal is the biggest thing that's going to help you and keep you disciplined in terms of saving, of course. If you don't have something that you're working towards, you're not initially going to have a reason to save your own money.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was hoping you were going to go to, was the having a goal, because it's a lot easier to stop the impulse buying if you know that that's going to affect or delay, right, your goal. If you have a goal to buy a house, and you know every time that you go to Taco Bell and you spend $12, it's going to cost you $50 or $60, and it's going to delay that house. Really weigh it. What's more important at that point in time?
Exactly. It's like if you take 2 different people and one person is trying to save to buy a house and one person isn't saving to buy a house. Mm-hmm. The person that's going to save to buy a house, they're going to do everything within their power to save that money as soon as possible so they can buy the house. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a desire to buy a house, what do you need to save that much money for?
Yeah. And I'm one of those that just had a significant car issue that came up out of nowhere. Thankfully, I have a savings to do that, but it killed me. I think I've only ever had one thing in my life that I ever wrote that size of a check for, right, to pay. And to pay it for something that I already have just to get it repaired was crazy. But ultimately, you know, my goal is to replenish that money as quickly as possible. So a tool that I use out of each paycheck, you know, I have my operating account and then I have my savings account. And when my direct deposit comes in, X amount of money goes into my savings account. The rest goes into my operating account. Well, to get that money back up quicker, I went in and changed that and upped the amount going to my savings account until I get that there. And, you know, who knows, maybe that becomes something I'm used to now budgeting for, and that builds up quicker from there on out. But that's kind of how I managed that, was I need to get that savings back up to where it was. How can I do that? Well, let me increase my monthly direct deposit that goes into my savings, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. If it just went to my operating account, I'm probably going to spend that. If it goes in here before I ever even see that, there's a couple less things I'm going to buy each month.
We discussed that system at the workshop. We had a gentleman, he thought just credit unions did that. He said, oh, at our credit union, I can send half my check here, half it there. Mm-hmm. We're like, you know, all institutions do that, but that is an excellent way, you know, to save. And it actually brought up your son as an example when you talked about his money in the savings account and he owed you money. Mm-hmm. He told you, no, Dad, I don't touch that. So, you know, yeah, all excellent examples of ways that you can save. So,
yep, awesome.
And I will say, just the last throw this out here, even if you are a individual that lives paycheck to paycheck, even if you can't save a large amount, $5 is still something. Mm-hmm. Even if you're going to do $5 a month, still at the end of the year, that's still $60. Like it's still a savings. everybody's savings is not going to be the same. Like some people can save a couple $1,000s a month. Some people can save a couple $100s a month. If you're still able to save even $20 a month, you still have a savings. That is the goal. It's not about whose savings can grow the fastest. It's all about what you can do to protect yourself in the future.
Mm-hmm. You can learn to live off $5 less today. You can learn to live off $10 less a year from now, 12 months, 6 months from now, whatever the case may be. Kind of my point there is like, I have X amount of money going into here. I'm putting more in there now, but by the time, that builds back up, I'm probably used to that money going in there. So I'm probably just going to keep it and just build up quicker. So different tools. So great conversation, gentlemen. Anything to add before we get out of here?
Nothing. Hope to see you June 18th.
June 18th.
From 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. at the Fort Wayne Urban League. Bring your sons, bring your daughters. A lot of good knowledge regarding being financially responsible. A lot of tricks of the trades, tools that you can use within your home.
Yep. You might get yourself a candy bar or $5 too.
Candy bar, fed, food too. So hey, so yeah, we forgot about that part. We ate good. The kids ate good.
Yeah, kind of food.
We had pizza,
chips, candy bars,
yeah.
bars.
All the stuff teenagers like.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, gentlemen, we're gonna get out of here for today. But great conversation. We will be back. You said July 18th.
June 18th.
June 18th.
This month. That's a couple weeks.
Will we be back on here before then? If not, okay. If not, we'll be back in 2 weeks. So, I'm Ryan Leopard, JJ Foster, T Money.
Okay, new one. All right.
We are Our Neutral Voices. Peace.